Good evening. The top stories on 6 News this hour. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has declared a new dawn for Australia's defence policy ahead of talks in the US about the nuclear submarine project. Mr Albanese met with Britain's Prime Minister, saying the relationship Australia has had with both the UK and US is really exciting. He has also been speaking with other leaders in the region, saying it does build a long-term relationship. Lawson Broad has resigned as the president of the NT's country Liberal Party after a party motion was passed to oppose the Indigenous voice to Parliament. He told Sky News he has also quit the party altogether. It does come ahead of a by-election in the seat of Arafura this Saturday that the CLP is contesting alongside of Labor and the Federation Party. And multiple people have died southwest of Sydney after a crash between a car and cement truck. Emergency crews were called to the crash scene on the Hume Highway earlier this morning. A woman and a child died at the scene, while a second child was flown to hospital in a critical condition. That is 6 News for this hour. There is more news 24/7 on our website 6newsau.com and on social media. Just search 6NewsAU to find us. I'm Darby Travers. More news coverage continues right after this.
What we've thought would happen, and that is a big win for Mark McGowan.
That target of 30 seats has been reached by the Labor Party, so this election is officially over.
We're looking at landslide territory, not just a comfortable victory for the Premier.
It's an absolute massive majority.
There was mass disappointment in the Liberal Party.
Thank you all so much. All the very best.
To understand how Labor won so big at the 2021 election, we have to go back 4 years to 2017. Mark McGowan led Labor to victory, defeating the Colin Barnett-led Liberal government. That election was also called the landslide, and for good reason. Labor gained 20 seats, bringing their total of 41 out of 59. The Liberals reduced to 13, the Nationals 5. It was the state's largest majority government, but it could get bigger. 2020 saw the arrival of the COVID pandemic. WA implemented a hard border policy, and lockdowns were less common than in other states like Victoria and New South Wales. And among voters at the time, it was popular. It also didn't help that the Liberals had switched leaders twice before eventually settling on Zac Kirkup. He didn't last long though, losing his seat and facing criticism from within his own party almost immediately after the loss.
I've described the energy policy as the stupidest policy that I've ever seen, and I stand by that comment.
The energy policy was an absolute disaster. I was expecting on Saturday morning to receive a pretty severe haircut. What we received was a decapitation.
There was mass disappointment in the Liberal Party. There was almost complete and utter apoplexy at the state of the party, and that kept coming back to me every single time I spoke to people.
Peter Kennedy is a WAMN News contributor and former ABC journalist. 6 News spoke to him from Perth to discuss the current state of WA's politics.
The McGowan government is effectively riding high with that majority that it's got that you mentioned, and historic majority. Leo, the West Australian economy is in good shape. Unemployment levels are low, among the lowest in the country. The resource sector's going like a rocket. So from that point of view, the government is doing well. Revenues are strong, huge surpluses. And so from the economic point of view, going well. They've got problem areas. Hospitals are a major problem, and emergency departments and waiting times. That's a big issue. Law and order, particularly in regional centres in the north of the state, that's a problem for them. And their signature MetroNet policy, which is new railway lines around the metropolitan area, that's running late and also over budget. So they've got a number of problem areas, and on top of all that, they've got a problem with police, and the police are unhappy about pay arrangements. So the police are talking about taking industrial action. So they're sorts of issues that are problems for the government, but not problems from the opposition. The opposition is not posing a great deal of problems for them at all.
Do you think, though, that a party having 100% control of both houses in Parliament, especially the upper house, which is meant to be this big house of review, that is fundamentally dangerous?
Well, it's not unusual in the West Australian context. This is the first Labor government in the state's history to have a majority in both houses. So from that point of view, it is historic. Previously, when coalition governments have been in power, they've also enjoyed a majority in the upper house. And they've been able to get through legislation virtually without opposition. Labor in government up until now has always had to sort of horse trade to try and get legislation through the upper house. What I think is potentially risky is that the majorities are so decisive. The majority in the lower house, extraordinary, historic majority for Labor, and also in the upper house, a strong majority there. But the important thing is, if a government abuses those majorities, then they'll pay for it at the ballot box.
Yeah, and I mean the thing is, of course, and we've seen Liberal national governments in the past. I mean, McGowan obviously defeated one back in 2017, but even then, the relationship in WA between the Liberals and Nationals is a bit less, concrete than maybe federally. It's always been more of an alliance, less some form of coalition. They run against each other often. They run different upper house tickets, though we're expecting that to change come 2025. And that's where I kind of want to bring up the opposition here, because when we first thought of this special, we were thinking of interviewing Liberal leader David Honey. That is not happening now. What do you make of what exactly is going on? We'll get to the Nationals in a second, but just the Liberal Party right now, who again are not the opposition, which is ridiculous in its own sense.
Well, of course, it's ridiculous. It's the first time, effectively, since 1947, I think, that in the Liberals in opposition haven't had the majority. But that is an extraordinary state of affairs. Not only that, but the Liberals have been a dominant party in Western Australian politics for so long. However, the situation with two Liberal members out of 59 in the Legislative Assembly is a very unhealthy situation. It's democracy at work, Leo. It's democracy at work. That's the way people voted. But it's very, very unhealthy, I think, for good government, or the continuing good government in anywhere, because I think governments operate best when majorities are tight. And I've seen that happen elsewhere. Not to say that the McGowan government has been sloppy, but it could become sloppy with a big majority like that. The point you make about discipline has been quite strong. The Labor members have been marching to the same tune. There have been no defections, as you say. There have been no sort of outliers. But how long can that continue? Who knows? But so far, the Labor discipline's been strong. But from the point of view of the majority, unhealthy for the long-term benefit, I think, of any state.
What do you make of just in terms of what's going on with this whole opposition alliance? Because it's not a coalition. The opposition leader is a national. The deputy opposition leader is a national. And while the Liberals have more seats total in the parliament, Nationals have more in the lower house. Therefore, they do get that incredible status here. Do you reckon the Nationals might just be, because regardless, I'm sure they're not going to ever get this again. They're just going to be savouring these 4 years, actually getting, ahead of the Liberals for once, because again, they do seem to more be even closer to rivals in WA than they would say federally or in Victoria or in New South Wales.
Well, the National Party could be savouring it, but it would be for a very short-term political gain. What the National Party and the Liberal Party have to do, and I think they realise this, but they've been yet to enunciate it, is they've got to come to an agreement as to how to campaign over the next 2 years leading up to the election in 2025. They've got to work out how to campaign, how to best campaign, how to use their limited resources most effectively. And it comes down to this, Leo. In the upper house, there's going to be a Senate-type election system for the first time in Western Australia. And I think that there'll be a very strong push. The National Party on its own would be decimated in the upper house under this system. So for its survival, it's got to come to an agreement with the Liberal Party and work out, for the upper house particularly, a joint ticket, as operates in some other states. New South Wales is one, a joint ticket where the National Party would have winnable seats on that ticket. And to achieve that, the Liberal Party would also, I think, that would be a concession to the Nationals by the Liberals, but the Liberal Party would also say to the Nationals, we need extra resources for campaigning that the Leader of the Opposition has, the National Party leader, as Leader of the Opposition has. We need to share those resources. If not hand over the opposition leadership, that would be a huge step, but at least share those resources so that we can campaign together more effectively. They have to come to a working relationship. If they don't, their position will not improve.
Yeah, Nationals, especially in the upper house. I mean, they lost an MP this year, or not this year, this term, due to various legal circumstances. But yeah, they could not run on their own. I mean, they could, but they wouldn't win. You'd say that. But I reckon. Do you think, because they even in government, they never seem to be the best of friends. Do you think it'd be possible that we could still see that National taking on Liberal seats, or Liberals taking on National seats, while also maybe in the upper house running at the same time? They would continue that, or whether they would just, or do you think they might just try to go full unified and just stay out of each other's turf? No Liberals running in regional WA. I think that's more unlikely because Libby Medham isn't exactly the most metro area, but her seat isn't the most metro area, but still.
Well, I think that they would, in previous years, there's been an agreement where perhaps there hasn't been an opponent of, say, a sitting member who's a member of the ministry or whatever when they've been in government. So there's been an arrangement like that, or haven't run a candidate against the leader of the other party, that sort of thing. But look, their situation is so dire this time round that I think they've got to be very pragmatic. They've got to have their feet on the ground and say, hey, how can we best maximise the non-Labor vote? And they've got to come to some sort of agreement. In some seats, in regional seats, Leo, it might work best for the Nationals and the Liberals to run, but also to do a very tight preference exchange and to get them over the line against a Labor opponent, because remembering that Labor and the Greens work well together. So in some regional seats, a Liberal candidate and a National Party candidate, swapping preferences, but maximising that non-Labor vote. They're the sort of things that they've got to consider and come to a very pragmatic decision on it.
How do you think the public are perceiving the Liberal Party right now? As we mentioned, they don't get the opposition leader status. They do technically have 9 MPs, though it's widely accepted that everyone just mocks them because of the two in the lower house, and that is something that's known nationwide. Like, it is concerning when you can actually, most somewhat politically active people, no matter where they live in Australia, can recall the amount of seats a party has in a particular state lower house. You just remember it's 2. And it's an extraordinary fact, and I'm never going to let that go in this term. But how do you think the voting public might be perceiving the Liberal Party right now, halfway through this McGowan term, when we know the popularity is nothing like where it was at the election, but he's not exactly in a position where he's about to face a spill?
No. I think traditional Liberal supporters, but who then became McGowan voters 2 years ago, I think they're appalled and very concerned at the performance of the party. And traditional Liberal voters would be hoping, they're looking for signs that the party is regrouping, that it's coming up with policies that are attractive and that are sort of alternative to the Labor government, and looking for good candidates to run at the election in 2 years' time. And I think this is a crucial year. This is a crucial year for the Liberal Party to start to produce policies which resonate with West Australia's traditionally a conservative state. So it needs to resonate with West Australian voters, but also start to assemble a team of strong candidates who will win seats, who will win back the previously safe Liberal seats as a starting point. They're not going to sort of win government at the next election, but I think traditional supporters are looking for signs that the party is rebuilding. So far, they haven't seen them, and this will be a crucial year for the Liberal Party.
Labor's massive majority wouldn't be complete without the WA Legislative Council. They already held the most seats in the state's upper house after 2017, but managed to gain 8 in 2021 to get full control. 19 votes are needed to pass legislation. Labor has 22 MPs. The Liberals do have more MLCs than the Nationals, with the crossbench including just a single Greens MP, 2 legalised cannabis MPs, and a member of the Daylight Saving Party, Wilson Tucker. Tucker was elected on the back of preference deals after receiving just 98 primary votes under the group voting ticket system. Labor had said this before the election when asked about changing the upper house electoral system.
It's not on our agenda. I've answered this question many times. It's not on our agenda. We care deeply about country WA, and the issues of jobs, health, education, important infrastructure are the sorts of things that we will implement.
But less than a year into their second term, they did change it, introducing a statewide upper house similar to New South Wales and leaving Victoria as the last state with group voting tickets. The move makes it almost impossible for micro parties like the Daylight Saving Party with low votes to win off preference deals. Wilson Tucker, now an independent Daylight Saving MP after the party was deregistered earlier this year, spoke to 6 News about how he's finding his time in Parliament so far.
And since then, since 2021, and it's been 2 years already, it's gone very, very quickly. I've done my best to represent the people in Mining and Pastoral Region. I'm a regional member in the upper house and also represent the party as well as the leader of the Daylight Saving Party on the issue of daylight saving and trying to dispel some of the myths and really talk about some of the benefits. So it's been a crazy 2 years. It's good to be here and 2 more left. So yeah, looking forward to it.
And I will get onto the daylight saving issue in a moment. But of course, the mining and pastoral region is huge. It is one of, if not the biggest electorate anywhere in the world. I mean, it's gigantic.
That's
when
right.
you think about it. Yeah, it's amazing. And of course, so much of it is just, well, there's no one there. But of course, there are lots of communities throughout. So what's it like having to, not even less so the amount of constituents, but the amount of area you're having to cover and deal with? I imagine challenges in one area are going to be completely different to the other. What's it like? Is it easy to cover that, or have you been able to, represent people successfully, all people in the region?
Yeah, look, it is massive. I think it is one of the largest, as you said, if not the largest electorate in the world. It's around 2 million square kilometres with about, I think it's about 140,000 people living there. So it's massive. It's quite disparate. We do see some low voter turnout numbers as well in state elections. I think it has like the lowest just because of the sheer size of the place. My electorate office is in Perth because it's kind of like this adage of all roads lead to Rome. It's hard to sort of cover that area, and especially as a single member, I just find myself on a plane a lot, traveling, which is great because it's a beautiful place. We've got Broome, Exmouth, like these are sort of tourist traps, and for good reason. And then you have, you have other places, Kalgoorlie, Kununurra, in the Kimberley and the Goldfields. It is very varied. It is hard to sort of reach people, and that's something I've been trying. Like as a single member, really hard to cover that much ground. I've been trying to sort of use forms of direct democracy to really reach out to people. Sort of open up question time as a tool for people to reach out and let me know what they think, and really ask questions of ministers and the Premier as well. And just doing the old-fashioned stuff as well, basically just getting on a plane, going to community events. So look, it is interesting. Mining and Pastoral Region will go away as a region, unfortunately, in the next term, because we did see some pretty significant an overhaul of the upper house, which is going to really hurt some of the regional representation in Western Australia, which is unfortunate. But I do have 2 years left, so I'll continue to try and use sort of technology sort of digital outreach as a sort of medium, I guess you could say, to try and connect with people and understand what their pain points and their challenges are.
Can I just ask? I appreciate we are only halfway through your term here, but I obviously, with odds stacked against you, arguably even more, are you planning to attempt to run in the new look upper house? Because we know that unlike other statewide upper houses, there is quite a low quota that's been brought in here, which is which I think might help some minor parties.
Yeah, so the system was, I mean, the overhaul that we did see was making it harder for those minor parties, and we have seen a deregistration coming through under these new laws with about 11 parties, including the Daylight Party, not meeting those registration requirements. So look, never say never. So I will be running as an independent. It is an honor to be here and a good opportunity to travel around and meet a lot of people. So I'm definitely enjoying my time. I'd like to keep that door open for as long as possible. And 2 years is a long time. I'm a bit of a sort of short-term planner. But look, never say never. The quota is quite low, but at the same time, because we are moving to this single electorate for the upper house, I think you still need to hit about 40,000 votes to be in that running to then use preferences to get you across the line. So it raises the bar, but it doesn't sort of remove it, I guess, from arm reach for minor parties. But it will make it hard as an independent. So it's really trying to cut through, represent people on the issues they care about, and hopefully people remember your face and what you stand for, come election time.
What's it like in terms of moving away from whether you're independent or daylight saving party, having to, perform the role of someone who's supposed to be in the balance of power when you can't block anything? And we know Labor, MPs aren't crossing the floor anytime soon. What have you been able to, or what have you been doing, I should say?
Yeah, look, it is a frustrating situation. I think it is frustrating from a democratic standpoint as well. I think having that balance of power and having at least more of a balance of power is a good thing. And right now we are seeing sort of an increasingly arrogant government who feels like they've been given this massive mandate through the pandemic to basically do what they want. So it is frustrating. It's sort of, I guess, curbing expectations and sort of realigning and being realistic in terms of what you can do. So there's certainly in Parliament, you are sort of a little bit hamstrung in terms of affecting big change, but you can still have input into sort of bills through amendments. You can still raise debate and try and change as much as you can the hearts and the minds of MPs and certainly the public as well. Being on the public admin committee as well has been a really good experience. Advocating for regional Western Australia through the committee process is a way where you can still have those wins behind the scenes. They're not sort of directly attributed to an individual MP. It's more the committee, but participating in that process is something where you can affect change behind the scenes. I think there's sort of a couple facets to being a politician. There's sort of the parliamentary business, which is a bit frustrating right now given the numbers in the chamber. And then there's also being a politician and sort of representing people as well. So I think that's the avenue where you can have more sort of change on the ground. It's really sort of listening to people, advocating for them, and trying to advocate for the issues that they care about behind the scenes, and having those conversations with the water cooler moments with the ministers, and trying to be reasonable in terms of how you raise specific issues that have been overlooked by the government. I think that's where you can have those wins. So I'm not expecting sort of major sort of legislative reform as an individual member, but certainly there still is benefit from fighting for what people are telling you that are issues on the ground that they care about.
I know there's not many of them, but formally, informally, have you been able to work or do conversation with some of the other crossbenchers, Legalised Cannabis Greens, or even the opposition alliance that they have there? Because again, not many of you can't block anything, but still, you are all opposition voices in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, we keep lines of communication open. Certainly, I think the crossbencher are fairly aligned in terms of we're kind of a sort of centrist, progressive kind of bunch. We all care about legalizing cannabis. I'm aligned with the Greens member on a lot of things. So we do talk. We have sort of, I guess, an unofficial alliance on a number of things. We can make noise in the media, which is one way of where you can sort of affect some change, through trying to, I guess, get your message out there in the public. And that's one sort of accountability mechanism that the government is sort of accountable for, or party to. And certainly talking to the opposition as well. There aren't that many of them. So it is important to keep these lines of communication open. And certainly talking to regional members as well, whether they're crossbench or opposition. I think that's where having these independent voices is effective, because the Labor members are fairly restrictive in terms of what they can and can't say. So this is where it is effective for independents to sort of shine a light in the darkness, if you will, in areas that have been overlooked by the government. So yeah, keeping lines of communication open, certainly.
Now, I know you said you're not a one-trick pony, but I do have to ask about daylight saving here. Are you hopeful that it will eventually, happen? Is there, sufficient change in the air? Is there, a mood from the people you're speaking to that this is something they do want, or at least would consider at the very least?
Yeah, look, never say never. I mean, the wheels of government and our democratic system turn very slowly. So it is a case of sort of building up momentum for your cause. And so I think it's about having those conversations, trying to get that message out in the media as much as possible, get that feedback from the community, and building that momentum. Like 2 years in the game isn't a very long-term time for, in the political system. So you need to probably get a couple more years, under my belt to sort of build up that momentum. But I think in this post-pandemic world, there is a lot of benefit that comes with daylight saving. It's changed where we work. The time zones are playing a more increasingly important role in terms of how we work as well. And that 3-hour difference with the East Coast does really add up. Reducing that has lifestyle and economic benefits for it. So I think there is a case for daylight saving. The Premier has been quite, I guess, he's put his position, quite clearly in terms of where he stands on daylight saving, which is unfortunate. We're seeing a Premier that doesn't engage with the people as much. He is leading an increasingly arrogant government. You could say they're not listening to the people. They just think that they have this huge mandate through the pandemic, and they can basically do what they want, which a lot of the legislative change actually and changes through standing orders in Parliament does help Labor, entrenches their position, entrenches the two-party system, and is bad for democracy. So I think right now it's a case of, we're not going to see any huge change, but really trying to build up community support in the long term.
Now, the chances of Labor losing at the next election are ridiculously slim. The Liberals need 28 seats, and even if they wanted to form a majority, they'd also probably have to form a coalition with the Nationals, the latter also likely needing a said coalition agreement to stay represented in the upper house. And Labor support isn't exactly dying off either. Last year, the McGowan factor was credited by many for the ALP picking up a bunch of WA-based seats in the federal election that ended up giving them their majority. Both the Liberals and Nationals have changed leaders as well since the election. The Liberals, after then leader David Honey, saw an approval rating of just 9%. The more likely outcome is that Labor loses a few seats in the upper house, maybe a couple in the lower house as well. Probably not many though, given most of their seats are classified as very safe. A reminder of the latest headlines and breaking news 24/7, head to our website, SIXNewsAU.com, or follow us on social media. Just search 6NewsAU to find us, and subscribe on YouTube with notifications on as well.
when big news breaks.
It pains me to announce that I have no option but to resign from the office of Premier.
Reimpose stage 3 stay-at-home restrictions effective from midnight tomorrow night.
6 News is there for you.
This was a scene of what some are describing as almost a violent confrontations with police and protesters.
Bringing you up-to-the-minute coverage that's focused on the facts.
I just wrapped up a call with the